Welcome, lost souls. You've just stepped into Lilith Alaster Official, a place where horror meets passion, and every heartbeat might be your last. If you love eerie tales, dark romance, and spine-tingling short stories that blur the line between the living and the damned, you're in the right place. I publish a new story every week, each one a descent into something a little more unsettling, and maybe a little more beautiful. So if that sounds like your kind of night, leave a like, whisper your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to join the growing coven that gathers here every week. And for those who want to go deeper into the darkness, to support my work and unlock extra perks including full ebooks and audiobook versions, you can join my Patreon. The links are in my bio. Thanks so much. Now dim the lights, take a deep breath, and let the story begin. Deep within the shadows of an abandoned apartment, November rain hides a secret more terrifying than starvation itself. When struggling artist Karen discovers a starving Lamia trapped in her attic, she expects fear. Instead, she finds a mirror reflecting her own hollow soul. This is a haunting tale where ancient mythology collides with modern despair, exploring what happens when the monster you hunt realizes she is just as broken as you are. As lines blur between flesh and myth, love turns into a dangerous consumption, and survival demands a sacrifice neither was brave enough to ask for. Witness the slow unraveling of sanity, the birth of impossible art, and the heartbreaking truth that some hungers can only be fed by giving yourself away completely. Prepare for a cinematic journey into the dark places we hide, where the ultimate act of love might just mean becoming prey. You won't forget this story until you finally understand the price of connection. The November rain streaked down the window pane in long, crooked fingers. Karen pressed her palm flat against the cold glass, watching her reflection blur and sharpen with each gust of wind. The city lights beyond the glass were smeared into watercolor blurs, soft and distant, nothing like the hard edges she used to capture with her brush. Behind her, the blank canvas stood on its easel like an accusation. 3 months of staring at that white rectangle. 3 months of waiting for something to move inside her, some spark of heat or hunger or desire that never came. The turpentine smell hung in the air, sharp and familiar, but it didn't stir her the way it used to. Nothing did. She let her hand fall from the window and turned back to the canvas. Her fingers twitched, remembering the weight of a brush, the slide of pigment across linen. But when she reached for a tube of ochre, her hand stopped halfway, hovered, dropped to her side. The bills were stacked on the table beneath the window. 2 months overdue. The gallery owner had called 3 times yesterday. Judith's voice, clipped and patient and wearing thin. "The show is in 6 weeks, Karen. I need to see something. Anything." There was nothing to show. A sound came from above. Karen froze, her breath fogging the glass again. It was a wet, dragging noise, slow and heavy, like something being pulled across the attic floorboards. Not the quick skitter of rats, not the settling of old wood. This was deliberate. Measured, it stopped, then started again, a few feet to the left. She tilted her head, listening. The rain filled the silence between the sounds, then the dragging resumed, closer this time, as if whatever made it knew she was standing directly beneath. She told herself it was rats. Old houses had rats. It was that simple. But the rhythm was too slow, too patient. It waited until she had almost convinced herself, then started again, a long, wet slither that seemed to end right above her head. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. The sound came and went in waves, sometimes fading to nothing for an hour, then returning louder than before. By Wednesday, she had stopped pretending it was rats. By Thursday, she knew she would have to see. The ladder creaked as she pulled it down from the ceiling. The attic yawned open above her, a black rectangle that swallowed the light from the apartment. Cold air spilled down, smelling of dust and old wood and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet, like blood left too long in a pan. She climbed one-handed, the flashlight trembling in her grip. The beam cut a narrow cone through the darkness, picking out dust motes and cobwebs. The attic was smaller than she remembered, the roof sloping low, forcing her to crouch. The beam found the corner first. A shape huddled there, wrapped in a filthy sheet that clung to the contours of a body. But the proportions were wrong. The lower half was too long, too thick, coiled in loops that glinted faintly in the light. The upper half was a woman's torso, pale and thin, ribs pushing against translucent skin. The face lifted as the light touched it, and the eyes caught the beam and held it. Golden eyes. Fever bright. Hungry. Karen's hand clenched around the flashlight. Her breath stopped in her throat. She wanted to scream, to fall backward, to scramble down the ladder and never look up again. But her body didn't move. Her feet were planted on the dusty boards, her legs locked, her heart pounding so hard she could taste it. The creature's lips parted. Her voice was a whisper, cracked and desperate, barely audible over the rain. "Please. I haven't eaten in weeks. I'll die." The words settled into Karen's chest like a stone dropped into still water. She stared at the hollow belly, the visible ribs, the way the creature's hands, thin hands, human hands, clutched at the sheet as if it were the only thing holding her together. "Please," the Lamia said again, and her voice broke. Karen's rational mind kept screaming at her to run. But something deeper held her rooted, something that recognized the emptiness in those golden eyes because it lived inside her own chest. The same hollow ache, the same slow starvation. She lowered the flashlight. The beam wobbled across the floor. "I'll get food," she heard herself say. The words came out flat, strange, as if spoken by someone else. She climbed down the ladder, found bread and cheese and an apple in the kitchen. She brought them up on a plate, her hands shaking. The creature ate with convulsive swallows, barely chewing, her golden eyes never leaving Karen's face. The food disappeared in seconds, and when it was gone, she looked at the empty plate, then at Karen. The Lamia's belly was still flat. "Food fills the stomach," she whispered. Her voice was softer now, raw with exhaustion and something that might have been shame. But not the emptiness inside. Karen knelt on the attic floor, the dust settling around her knees. She looked at the creature, the monster, the myth, the starving thing in the corner, and felt a recognition so sharp it hurt. "What does?" Karen asked, the question already burrowing into her chest like a splinter. The Lamia's golden eyes met hers. They were ancient and desperate and full of a hunger that had no bottom. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm dying to find out." Karen stayed there, kneeling in the dark, while the rain beat against the roof and the creature shivered in her filthy sheet. She stayed until the flashlight battery died, and the darkness swallowed them both, and she felt more alive than she had in years. The soup grew cold in the bowl between them. Karen watched Sesha's throat move with each swallow, mechanical and desperate, but the hollow beneath her ribs only seemed to deepen. The scales along her spine caught the flashlight's glow, shifting from bronze to violet, bruised and iridescent. She had been eating for 2 weeks now, and her hunger had only sharpened. "You need more," Karen said, setting the bowl aside. "Maybe something with protein. Meat." Sesha shook her head slowly. Her golden eyes were fixed on Karen's face, tracking the movement of her lips as she spoke. "It's not the food." "Then what?" The Lamia didn't answer. She reached out, her cool fingers finding Karen's forearm. The touch was light, barely there, tracing the blue veins beneath the skin. Karen's breath caught. She did not pull away. The sensation spread from that single point of contact, heat bleeding through her chest like spilled paint on wet canvas. Sesha's hand slid upward, her palm pressing flat against the inside of Karen's wrist. The skin there was thin, translucent, the pulse fluttering against the Lamia's fingers like a trapped bird. Sesha leaned in, her cheek pressing against the curve of Karen's throat. She inhaled slowly, deeply, as if breathing in color. "You smell like light," she whispered. Her voice vibrated against Karen's skin, sending a tremor through her entire body. "Like something I could live inside forever." The forked tongue flickered out, tasting the salt on Karen's wrist. It was quick, almost shy, but the sensation burned. Karen's knees buckled. She sat down hard on the attic floor, the dust puffing up around her, her heart hammering against her ribs. Sesha pulled back, her golden eyes searching Karen's face. "I shouldn't have done that." But Karen could still feel the cool trail of the tongue on her skin, the heat it left behind. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Downstairs, the blank canvas had become a battlefield. Karen's brush moved with a fury she had not felt in months. The paint was thick and dark, layered in heavy strokes that built into scales and shadow, a woman uncoiling from blackness, her body folding into impossible shapes. The figure's arms were wrapped around something invisible, something that might have been another body, might have been the darkness itself. The phone rang. Karen let it. Judith's voice on the answering machine, clipped and patient. "Karen, I need to know what you're bringing. Call me back." Karen painted through the night. She painted until her arm ached and the light through the windows turned gray with dawn. The canvas was full now, crowded with bodies that merged and separated, that reached for each other with hands that became tendrils, that became scales. She climbed back up the ladder as the sun rose, her body swaying with exhaustion. Sasha was waiting, coiled in the corner, her golden eyes bright in the dim light. The hollow beneath her ribs seemed to pulse, a living void that demanded filling. "I painted you," Karen said, her voice hoarse. She sat down across from Sasha, close enough to feel the cold radiating from the Lamia's skin. "I know." I could feel it. Sasha's hand moved, brushing a strand of hair from Karen's face, like a thread pulling through my chest. They sat in silence, the rain starting again outside, tapping against the roof. Sasha shifted, her tail uncoiling slowly, wrapping around Karen's waist. The scales were cool and smooth, sliding against her clothes, settling into a loose coil that held her without pressure. "I could consume you completely," Sasha said. Her voice was low, raw, thick with shame and longing. "Your memories, your dreams, your soul. It's what I am." Karen felt the words settle into her, heavy and dark. She should have felt horror. The rational part of her mind, still flickering somewhere in the back of her skull, screamed that this was wrong, that she was in danger, that she needed to run. But the recognition was stronger. A mirror she had always avoided now turned directly toward her. The desire to be unmade, the longing to dissolve into something larger, to let the emptiness finally be filled. "Why haven't you?" Karen whispered. Sasha's hand found hers, cold fingers intertwining. "Because I don't want to take. I want to be given." The coil around Karen's waist tightened slightly, pulling her closer. Sasha's forehead pressed against hers, their breath mingling in the cold air. "Would you give yourself to me, Karen?" The question hung between them, sharp and fragile. Karen could feel the hunger radiating from the Lamia, not just for flesh, but for everything she was, everything she had ever been. The void in her own chest yawned open, aching and empty. "I don't know," she said, and the lie tasted like ash on her tongue. Karen woke to warmth and darkness. The warmth was Sasha's breath, damp and rhythmic against her face. The darkness was a void above her, a mouth unhinged, opening like a cave, teeth glinting in the faint light from the window. Her body went rigid. The Lamia's jaws were stretched wide, wider than any human mouth, a tunnel of shadow that swallowed the dim glow from the street. Karen could see the pink curve of Sasha's throat, could feel the heat radiating from that wet hollow. Her breath hitched, catching on something that might have been fear. But it wasn't fear. Below the pounding of her heart, beneath the frozen stillness of her limbs, something else stirred. A pull. A longing so deep and quiet it felt like a secret she had kept from herself. The void above her matched the void inside her, and she wanted to fall into it, to let herself dissolve, to finally be taken. Sasha's body trembled. A violent shudder ran through her, and she jerked back, her jaw snapping shut with an audible click. She scrambled away, her tail scraping across the dusty floorboards, her chest heaving. "I almost did it," she whispered. Her voice was raw, broken. "And the worst part is, you wanted me to." Karen lay still on the mattress, staring at the spot where Sasha's face had been. Her throat was dry. She could still feel the warmth of that breath on her skin. She did not deny it. She could not. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Then Sasha began to cry, low and shuddering, her shoulders shaking. And Karen found herself crying too, the tears sliding down her temples into her hair, both of them weeping for reasons neither could name. The fight came with the dawn. Karen's voice was sharp, jagged, cutting through the attic air. "You used me. You were going to... I stopped." Sasha's golden eyes were rimmed with red, her face gaunt and hollow. I pulled back. "Doesn't that count for something?" "Count for what? You're still hungry. You'll always be hungry." "Yes." Sasha's voice dropped to a whisper. "I will always be hungry. That is my curse. But I chose you. I chose not to take." The argument spiraled through the afternoon, circling the same wounds, opening them again and again. Karen accused Sasha of hunting her, of pretending at tenderness while waiting for the right moment. Sasha wept that she could not control what she was, that every moment with Karen was a battle, that she had not eaten another human in 40 years because she refused to become what her mother had become. The words hung between them like a blade neither could look away from. That night, they ended up tangled on the mattress. Sasha's cool scales pressed against Karen's feverish skin, her arms wrapped tight around Karen's waist, her face buried in the hollow of Karen's shoulder. They cried until they were empty, and then they lay still, breathing together. "I want to give you something," Sasha said. Her voice was small, fragile. "Not take. Give." She pressed her palm against Karen's chest, over her heart. The skin was cool, the pressure light. Karen felt a pulling sensation, gentle and unfamiliar, like a thread being drawn through her. A memory surfaced. She was 7 years old, sitting on her grandmother's porch in summer, watching fireflies blink in the dusk. The smell of honeysuckle, the creak of the old wooden swing. Her grandmother's hand on her hair, stroking gently. The memory was gone before she could hold on to it, pulled away like smoke through fingers. Karen gasped, her body arching. The loss was sharp, a tiny death, but the sensation that followed was electric, a tingling rush that spread through her limbs, leaving her breathless and light. She felt Sasha swallow. The Lamia's belly rounded slightly, just enough to press against Karen's hip. "What did you do?" Karen's voice was hoarse. "I took a piece of your hunger." Sasha's hand still rested on her chest, trembling. "And I fed it to mine." The new ritual began that night. Sasha would press her palm against Karen's skin, her fingers splayed, and pull. A dream about her mother, the one where she was still alive and laughing, the smell of rain on asphalt, a comfort from childhood, the warmth that bloomed in Karen's chest when she first saw Sasha uncurl from the shadows. Each feeding left Karen drained and ecstatic, her limbs tingling like a limb waking from sleep. She would lie on the mattress afterward, floating, her thoughts scattered across a wide, dark sea. And Sasha would coil around her, her belly full, her scales gleaming with renewed vitality. In the studio, Karen's brush moved with frantic devotion. She painted through the night, through the mornings, her face smeared with ochre and ultramarine, her hands stained with indigo. The canvases stacked up like witnesses. Sasha's face emerging from shadow. Sasha's mouth open like a second moon, a dark crescent swallowing the stars. Sasha's hands reaching out of the frames, fingers curved into claws, pulling the viewer into an abyss that gleamed with golden light. The phone rang. Karen let it ring until the machine picked up. Judith's voice, tight and final. "The show is in 2 weeks, Karen. I need an answer. If you're out, I need to find someone else. Call me back or I'm pulling the slot." Karen deleted the message without listening to the end. She picked up her brush, loaded it with black, and pressed it against the canvas. The paint spread like oil on water, a dark bloom that became Sasha's hair, her throat, the curve of her shoulder. She was thin now, thinner than she had been. Her clothes hung loose on her frame, her cheekbones sharp against her skin. The mirror in the bathroom showed her a stranger, hollow-eyed and pale, a ghost haunting her own apartment. But when she climbed the ladder to the attic, when Sasha's arms wrapped around her and those golden eyes met hers, she felt more real than she had ever been. The hunger in the Lamia's gaze was a mirror of her own, and in that reflection she saw herself clearly for the first time. She was being consumed, and she was grateful. The full moon poured through the gaps in the attic roof, silver and cold, painting stripes of light across the dusty boards. Karen climbed the ladder slowly, her bare feet finding each rung, her breath clouding in the November air. She had left her clothes in a heap on the bathroom floor. The cold followed her up, biting at her skin, raising goosebumps along her arms and thighs. Sasha was thrashing when Karen reached the top. Her tail whipped against the floorboards, a sound like wet meat hitting wood, her scales catching the moonlight in flashes of bronze and violet. Her golden eyes were wild, unfocused, her lips pulled back from teeth that had lengthened into needles. "Sasha." Karen's voice was quiet, steady. The Lamia froze. Her head snapped toward Karen, and her chest heaved. The hollow beneath her ribs was a black pit, a void that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. She had not fed in 3 days. She had refused, pushing Karen away, locking herself in the attic, screaming that she would rather starve. "Karen, no. Get back. Get back down the ladder." Sasha's voice was fractured, her words slurred. Karen did not move. She stood in the moonlit attic, naked and thin, her ribs visible beneath her skin, her arms at her sides. She looked like a painting of a martyr, serene and terrible. "Please," Sasha's voice cracked. "I can't! I won't!" "Yes," Karen said, "you will." She crossed the floor and lay down on the mattress. The fabric was cold and rough against her back. She stretched her arms out, palms open, and looked up at Sasha. The Lamia's tail curled around itself, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face. "Do it," Karen said. "All of it." Sasha let out a sound that was half sob, half growl. Her body moved forward, uncoiling, her tail sliding across the boards. She hovered over Karen, her shadow blocking the moonlight, her face contorted with grief and hunger and love. "Please don't make me," she whispered. "You're not making me. I'm asking." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Sasha's jaws unhinged. The sound was soft, a wet click, and her mouth opened wide, wider, a warm cavern descending toward Karen's face. Karen felt a moment of vertigo. The world tilted, and she was falling into that darkness, falling and falling, but there was no fear, only a strange, floating calm, like the moment before sleep takes you. The first touch was Sasha's tongue, warm and soft, sliding across Karen's cheek. It tasted salt and skin, and Karen felt her thoughts begin to loosen, the edges fraying like old rope. A memory surfaced. Her mother's hands, cool and gentle, pressing a cold cloth to her forehead when she was sick. The image dissolved, pulled away, swallowed into warmth. More. Sasha's mouth closed around Karen's shoulder, her lips sealing, her throat working. Karen felt herself being drawn upward, not physically, but something deeper, her essence unraveling like thread from a spool. The attic ceiling blurred, the moonlight smeared, and she was pouring into Sasha like wine into a cup, like water into thirsty earth. She felt the Lamia's hunger, vast and ancient, a desert that had never known rain. She felt the loneliness that lived in Sasha's bones, a solitude so deep it had become part of her nature. And she felt her own loneliness rising to meet it, two voids recognizing each other in the dark, merging into something that was almost enough. Sasha swallowed, and Karen felt herself dissolve completely. Her thoughts scattered like ash on wind. The last thing she knew was warmth, complete and total, and the sound of Sasha weeping. The attic was silent except for the rain starting outside, tapping against the roof. Sasha lay curled on the mattress, her body swollen, her belly heavy and round. The hollow beneath her ribs had filled. The scales along her spine gleamed with a deep, healthy luster. She had expected relief. She had expected satiation, victory, the quiet of a hunger finally fed. Instead, she felt Karen's loneliness tangled with her own, a second thread woven through her heart. She felt Karen's memories drifting through her like fish in dark water. The grandmother's porch, the fireflies, the smell of turpentine, the ache of a blank canvas. She felt the weight of a woman who had chosen to be consumed, who had offered herself like a gift, who had loved her enough to become part of her. Sasha pressed her hands to her belly, feeling the warmth settled there. She curled into a tight ball, her tail wrapping around herself, her forehead pressed to the floorboards. The tears came again, hot and endless, soaking into the dust. "What have I done?" she whispered to the empty attic. There was no answer, only the rain and the moon and the two hearts beating inside her chest.